Right, we are here with Nicola again, this time to talk about resilience in the workplace. So, when we talk about resilience in shift work, what do you think that means, and how is that simply different from expecting people to cope?
Resilience in shift work is probably more about people managing themselves rather than sort of a company managing them. So it's managing themselves through making sure they eat properly, making sure they sleep properly when they're off shift, um, and how they keep their mental well-being on track, I suppose is the right way to put it, isn't it? Somebody that works shift work might not be able to spend as much time with family, friends, things like that, especially if they're working nights because they're sleeping during the day. Um, so I think really resilience it's a difficult one because people's resilience are different and it's a bit like how people manage stress or how people manage things. It all comes down to an individual and their resilience. But people build resilience around whether they work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, or whether they work shift work patterns that change on a 2, 3 weekly basis or every 4 days or whatever, because you go to work to do your job and to come home. And obviously, whatever it is people should be able to go to work, do their job safely, come home safely, earn the living that they want to be able to then spend time with family and friends. So I think resilience it is more of a difficult one because there's no probably exact answer on what should or shouldn't be done or how you can achieve it, I don't think. But, somebody might have a different view and they might say, well, actually, if you do X amount of exercise or make sure you eat the right foods, you can always optimize what you do. But, you know, emotional resilience is different in between myself and yourself and how we deal with things. Um, you know, it's I pat myself on the back when I tick something off my to-do list. That's sort of an emotional upbeat thing. I like spending time with friends and family. Again, that brings up your emotional thing. So everyone's different in what makes them right. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that, I'm afraid.
I think that's exactly it. I think resilience, there is no sort of standard form for it. I think it takes a shape and is tailored to each person. I think it's just finding what works best for you. And I
Yeah,
think there's sort of the physical resilience and the emotional resilience, looking both in your workplace, but also in your personal life as well. Um, Thank you for that. Why do you think resilience is particularly important for the ports industry, for example?
to be honest, I think it's probably important wherever the shift work is, but obviously in the ports industry, it's a high risk industry. So having people that are fit, healthy, working shifts and things is important. And so personal resilience is going to be important. But again, how you achieve that. There's lots of different scientific views on what resilience is, how to achieve resilience. But it will always come down to that individual. And that's why it's so important with the shift work to still make sure that you offer your employees and the workers there the same perks, facilities as such. Can they still get somewhere to get a hot meal, even though they're working a night? Is there still a tea room? Is lighting still adequate? Is there still a drying room? Is there somewhere they can come and get warm in the winter? So the difference between some workplaces, so if you work in a factory or a warehouse overnight, it is a fixed premises with the same type of work taking place. And although on a dock side or a quay side, it'll be the same type of work, you're loading, you're unloading, and storage, it's a different thing because you have to take into consideration weather and the time of year. And we all know, in the winter, people's resilience does drop a little bit more because you go to work in the dark and you come home in the dark. And that's whether you work a shift or whether you work 9 to 5. So, it's making sure that you do the best you can in the workplace to make your workers want to be there. That's my view. Anyway.
Yeah, so resilience, I guess it comes from both sides. So the employer needs to take that responsibility, and it is something that is affected by multiple factors. It's not just something that's a personal sort of thing to work on, because you do have, again, the weather, your type of role, the responsibilities you hold, they all impact sort of resilience that you can have. Um,
We all
so
know cold, wet, and snow makes us more miserable than the sun.
absolutely
And it
agree with
is a
that.
known fact. And if it's a warm, and actually in the summer, sometimes I think it's probably going to be better to work at night because the temperatures are better. It's that springtime where you've still got the cold, crisp nights that keep you awake a little bit more. But I think, none of us can control the weather. And we love to talk about it in Britain. That is one of our favourite, that and queuing. I think we're very good at both talking about the weather and queuing. But resilience is, there's personal and then there is the support that you receive. And I think it's that shift work support. It's not just about, you can't, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. So you could give somebody all the information and then they may not take it all in. So they may not go home and sleep for 8 hours. They may not go home and have proper meals or things like that. But then actually it's understanding, are they suited to that shift work, to that night work, and actually would they be better as a 8 till 4 or 6 till 10 type employee rather than overnight and shift work? And I think we talked about that last time we spoke, that you know, resilience is one thing, but there's lots of other factors that should go into, is that person right for shift work? Because if the person's constantly miserable doing what they're doing, they're never going to do it to their best of their ability. And actually, they're going to become more of a liability. If somebody is happy in their work, if somebody is motivated in their work, they're much more likely to, one, be a good employee, and two, to give it their best. There's got to be some incentive other than you get paid at the end of the day, hasn't there, to go to work, do your job, and do it effectively.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think that's one of the things as well, that resilience, I think there's mixed perceptions of it, that resilience is just simply, taking on how can we build that drive to keep going, keep going. But sometimes a big part of resilience is it suitable for me? Is it something that I need to change, or is it something that's not worth pursuing, I guess? Which is actually a nice tie to the next question. What sort of risks arise, do you think, when resilience is misunderstood as endurance rather than something that should be supported by systems and leadership?
I think if we just endure what we're doing, we're always going to be miserable. If you actually have no time for what you're doing and you're just going through the motions, actually that's quite unsafe because you're never going to be concentrating on the task and things like that. And that's where supervision, leadership is key, really. Identifying people that really aren't on task, identifying people that are really not engaging with what they're doing. Um, and there's always going to be some part of people's jobs that they don't like in the same way. Or, if you drive an item of plant or machinery, there's always going to be that rush for the new ones over the old ones because they've got air conditioning in the summer, or the seats are a little bit comfier because they're newer. Although there's some people who might go, actually, no, I always want the older one because it's familiar. So, it's ensuring that you understand your workforce, and it's making sure that even though it's a night shift or a weekend shift, that they're not at a disadvantage. They're not, you keep the supervision levels right, you keep everything right to understand your workforce. And I think there's more there, and that's as the cultures have changed and as we understand more about people, more about mental health and things like that, actually it's easier to see that difference between somebody that's very unhappy in their job, and somebody, who actually is doing the job effectively. So endurance, not sure. You know, I much prefer the part of the role where we're out talking about things rather than the writing the reports and the things like that. So, but I still do it because it's part of my job, but it wouldn't be the bit I'd want to do 24/7 as such. So yeah, difficult there, but leadership and supervision is always going to be key, whatever the risks.
I think that's an interesting point as well. I think there's a difference between, having those sort of challenges at work or something we don't enjoy as much, but then having the sort of resilience, I guess, to push through it. There's that, but then there's also enduring things and genuinely feeling unhappy consistently. And I think a big part of resilience is understanding the differences and being able to take action and make those changes to be the best you can be.
If you're
Um,
permanently unhappy in what you're doing, you're in the wrong job.
Perfect. Yeah.
Um, so
I couldn't agree more. Um, so I guess this is a question that's already been answered. But one of my questions was, is resilience something that individuals can build alone, or does it fundamentally rely on organizational support?
not just organisational support. I think I said that. It's the support of the organisation needs to have the right structures, the right policies in place, the right supervision, the right leadership. You as a person, you should have your own support systems externally to work, but equally, your colleagues are always a good support system. And in the ports, you also have the unions that are there to support and to assist with resilience and anything else and to work through what works best. So, it isn't this person and the company, it's that whole put together. Because if you're happy at home, you're happier at work. And so often when people are unhappy at work and it's not normal, it's because of something happening outside of that work life.
Of
Um,
course. I think it's that
and that
balance.
might not be something terrible. It might be you've got a new baby and you're not getting as much sleep, and actually that's a really joyful thing, isn't it? You've got a new baby, but your resilience is going to drop if something's going on, or you've been unwell, or somebody you know's not well, or equally, your partner's got a new job and therefore their time you're spending together is not as great or something like that. So it's not always going to be a bad thing that's creating these things at home. Um, but sometimes when your mind's elsewhere or things are going on at home, it's just making sure that's understood as well. And that's where culture, again, going backwards almost, is important, that, people feel they can say, I have got a new baby at home. I've had my 2 weeks paternity leave or whatever, but actually, we're teething now at 6 months or 7 months, and actually that's changed our sleep pattern again because we've just got them into that nice routine. It's lots of different things can affect things. Equally, the weather, the commute you had to work that day, all sorts of things can affect how you feel at work on any one day. So,
So from your experience or based on your thoughts, what does unhelpful resilience messaging look like in safety critical environments?
I think that is the you must type messaging, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it not one size is ever going to fit all, which is really difficult because, obviously you have a system that says we are going to go here, you have to be trained to drive a piece of plant and machinery. But actually, although the training does look at the same thing, if you think of a learner driver, the amount of lessons they take, the learning they're given, the circumstances they're put in will be different for every learner driver. And it's the same for plant and machinery. And in reality, it's the same for everybody else, isn't it? We all learn things in a slightly different way. We all understand things in a slightly different way. And if you look at health and safety legislation as a whole, it's a goal setting legislation. Goal setting allows you to do what is reasonably practicable, or so far as reasonably practicable, or look at a risk assessment and understand your own risks, use your workforce to come into that. But it doesn't say in this situation you do A, B, and C. The legislation is very much, you know, there is obviously a few bits of legislation that say you will, you must, you shall. It says you won't put your hand, you won't allow a piece of machinery to be used that's dangerous. Well, that's sensible, isn't it? If it's got big moving parts, you don't have it so you can get somebody's hand in it. That's why it's guarded and things like that. So if you look at resilience and you look at just any of this that we're talking about, the shift work fatigue, all of that is not one size fits all. And I've said that a number of times. Every person is different and every person needs to be understood in a little way. And that could be your managers all your way down to the driver, the crane driver, or even the guy that's in the office taking in the bits of paper. But really, if you have messaging that says this is how we're going to do it and we're only doing it this way, that's not going to be helpful.
Of course. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you for your answers. That is this section complete. I will stop the recording.
That's handy.